Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Susan Barnes with KSL Resorts. I'm also Director of Program Logistics on the Site Socal board. Thrilled to be here. How about a round of applause again for Taranay and the culinary team? Beautiful. What an amazing lunch. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Greg Steinberg. He's a professor of human performance at Austin Peay State University near Nashville, Tennessee. Golf Digest ranked him as one of the world's greatest sports psychologists, so watch out. He's the author of the Washington Post bestseller, Full Throttle, which illustrates emotional toughness principles applied to business. His work has appeared in the New York Times, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. He has appeared on numerous television shows, including Dancing with the Stars. Oh, he lives in Nashville, Tennessee with his wife, Tommy, their son, Miles, and their Italian greyhound, Fabio. Please welcome Dr. Greg Steinberg.
When Travis Pham asked me to speak to Site Socal, I jumped at the chance because I love to talk, just ask my wife. But more importantly, I love to share my knowledge, so hopefully I have a positive impact on your lives. And so it's a privilege and my joy to speak to you this afternoon. And with that being said, when people find out I've been on Dancing with the Stars, I always get the same three questions. One, can the stars really dance that well, or is it done with smoke and mirrors? Two, is there any hanky-panky going on between the stars and the dancers? Because I know you were thinking that. And three, you're not a star, so how in the heck did you get on that show? And I hope you didn't dance. Well, let me tell you, I am a terrible dancer. Case in point, this is my wedding dance. And we got married about 5 years ago, and this is my lovely bride, Tommy, and yes, I'm very, very lucky. It took me 6 months to learn this 2-minute dance, and if you look closely at my wife's teeth, she's gritting them, and she's saying, "Stop stepping on my feet, please." And why did we spend all that money on dance lessons? So, no, I didn't dance. I did not inherit a dance gene, but our son did. And if you're wondering, he's dancing to Talking Heads, and I showed him the 80s move. So, no, I didn't dance. What I did on Dance with the Stars is explain to the audience how these stars could handle the pressure of learning a new dance every week. If you're familiar with the show, every week they learn a new dance. And it's live TV in front of 20 million people. They're not dancers. They're not maybe stars. I mean, that's a different story. And so they're also being judged. So how do they handle that pressure? And that same pressure applies to you in the world of event planning, because your lives are under intense pressure. You have deadlines, you have budgets to meet, the pressure of client relationships, the pressure of going 24/7, and the pressure of doing so much with less and less. And so there's also pressure on your lives at home. The pressure of having a great attitude for your friends and family, the pressure of having great energy every day. So I ask you, how are you going to handle that pressure? How are you going to be at your best every day? Because who you are is important, and what you do is very important, so you must be at your best. You must be able to handle that pressure. And the simple answer is emotional mastery. When you master your emotions, you master your world. When you have the power over your fear, when you have the power over your negativity, you will release your talents. When you have the power, you will be your best when it really counts. And I learned the power of emotions when I was 15. When I was 15, yes, that's me. It's the 70s, and let me just say, I've kept those shorts. They're not going to fit, but I know the style's coming back. And the racket, and I call that the hair don't. And my life was great. I was on the tennis team. And then one heartbeat later, my dad died. And I went from this happy-go-lucky teen to this terrible teen. I started getting fights. I started yelling at the teachers. And luckily, the vice principal cared. He called me in his office and he said, Greg, you're going to be expelled unless you see Dr. Carlson. Well, I didn't want to see a shrink. I didn't even know what a shrink was, and I didn't want to see one, but he insisted. So that afternoon, my mother took me to see Dr. Carlson, and Dr. Carlson, within just a few minutes, he knew what was blocking me. He took a pillow from the couch, and he said, Greg, I want you to pretend this pillow is your dad, and I want you to start hitting it. And I was like, I don't want to hit that pillow if it's my dad. He's gone. I don't want to hurt him. And he said, no, just go with it. So I start hitting the pillow, and all of a sudden my motions start getting out of whack. And I start hitting the pillow harder, and then all of a sudden I want to rip that pillow, and I threw it on the ground, I stomped on it, and then I yelled out a painful scream. And that was the start of my journey. And I know a lot of you have lost a parent at a young age, and maybe you repressed your emotions like I had, but don't worry, we're not handing out pillows this afternoon. But once I started learning about my emotions, and I started gaining the power of my emotions, it took a while, but I went back that happy-go-lucky kid. And I remember vowing to understand how successful people master their emotions. So for the last 30 years, I've researched, I've consulted, I've coached some of the greatest athletes in the world, like players on the PGA Tour like Brandt Snedeker. If you're familiar with golf, I worked with players on the Bulls like Trent Hassel, people in the NFL. I've coached CEOs from the Fortune 500 companies, and I've worked with people just like you. And what I've discovered is this. Everyone has amazing talents. Everyone in this room has amazing, unbelievable talents. But sometimes you have emotions that block you. Fear and negativity. And so they block you from being your best under pressure. But the most successful people, what they can do is they have the right emotions. And so their talent comes out under pressure. And that's why they're so successful. It's really what I call they have the juice of life. And to explain this in a more literal, visual way, and before I do that, actually, let me talk about the negativity bias. And what they can do is the most successful people are emotionally tough. They basically have flipped the negativity bias. And the negativity bias is this. 40,000 years ago, when we were hunters and gatherers, we were living out of fear. We were afraid of dying. We were chased by mastodons and saber-toothed tigers. We were not masters of our domain. And people have retained, maintained, and continue to have the negativity bias. They live out of fear. They live out of doubt. They live out of worry. And all they're trying to do in this world is survive. But the most successful people, the people who are emotionally tough, they have flipped the switch. And they don't live out of negativity or fear. They live out of joy. They don't live out of doubt and worry. They live out of confidence. And they're not trying to survive. They thrive in this world. They have what I call is the juice of life. And to explain this in a more literal, visual way, I have my only prop. And I do this at my university to all my classes. And I say, this is on the test. Because when I say this is on the test, that means they have to listen. So this is on the test. So level 1 question. If I squeeze this orange, what comes out? Orange juice, right? If I squeezed it yesterday, what comes out? Orange juice. If I squeeze it tomorrow, what comes out? Orange juice. If you squeeze it, what comes out? Orange juice. Level 2 question. Why? Why does orange juice come out? Because that is what is inside. Right? Level 3 question. Level 3 question, what have you put inside? If you've put in fear and negativity and doubt, that is what comes out when you get squeezed. Because we all get squeezed in life. That is the human condition. We all get squeezed. But if you put in joy and love and compassion, then when you get squeezed, that's what comes out. And the most successful people, the people who are emotionally tough, they have put in the right juice of life. So it's really my hope today to help you to put in the right juice of life. And to be more specific on how to do that specifically, I want to share with you the emotional toughness triad. But before I do that, let me tell you, I love your questions. And this room is not so easy to ask questions, but I will be in the back of the room afterwards. So if you have any questions about emotional toughness or things about your life, please come ask me after the presentation, because I love your questions. I learned so much from questions. Last summer, I was speaking to 8-year-old golfers in Nashville. And if you've ever spoken to 8-year-olds, they do this the entire time. And I said, we're talking about emotional toughness, and at the very end of the talk, 20 minutes, I said, do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions? And finally, that one kid in the back starts jumping up, and I go, what is it? He goes, do you know you look just like Will Ferrell? So it must be the hair. But you can't pick your parents. In fact, my mom is here today. So thank you, Mom, for all the gifts you've given me and for looking like Will Ferrell. But with that being said, the emotional toughness triad is this. The first step is to be emotionally aware. That is the first key to emotional toughness. And you have to know why you have these key emotions, and why you are inspired, and why you're burnt out. Once you know that, you can then create what I call primers. Primers are words, actions, and images, powerful stimuli which push your emotions in the right direction. And then once you do that over time and create a habit, then when you get squeezed, these positive, powerful emotions come out under pressure. This is the emotional toughness triad. And if you look closely, you'll see it everywhere. And a great example of this is one of my favorite stories and who I really admire, Muhammad Ali. Long before he was boxing champion of the world, long before he strode up those stairs shaking from Parkinson's to light the Olympic flame, remember that in Atlanta? That was an amazing scene. He grew up very poor in Louisville. His mother could barely afford food, definitely not expensive toys, but the young Muhammad Ali, back then known as Cassius Clay, thank you, saw this blue bike. It was a Schwinn, had this leather seat and the great handlebars and that great emblem. And man, he wanted that bike. So he got a job boxing groceries at a local grocery store, excuse the pun. He finally had enough money for that blue bike, handed the shopkeeper the money. Next day, he rode all over Louisville for 8 hours. He showed off to his friends, his family, that blue bike. Man, he loved that bike. The next day, parked his bike in front of the grocery store when he went to work, made sure the lock was nice and tight. When he came back out, someone had clipped the lock and stolen his bike. And he never found his bike. He never found out who stole his bike. But we all know Muhammad Ali is a true champion. He's totally emotionally tough, and he harnessed that negative energy into a positive force of power. So every time he would step into the ring, he'd point at his opponent and say, "You're the guy who stole my blue bike." True story. Think about it. He's using the primers of the action, pointing. He's using the image of the blue bike, and he's saying, "You're the guy who stole my blue bike." That is how he basically became so successful. He's using this principle of emotional toughness triad that I'm sharing with you today. But it's not about sport. It's about life. And if you look closely, you'll see it everywhere. You'll even see it in acting. Everybody knows who this is, right? Matthew McConaughey. And he is one of the best, won the Academy Award for Dallas Buyers Club. And before every scene, he has a primer. And he goes like this. He pumps his chest 3 times. And when Leonardo DiCaprio saw that, he said, let's put that in the scene of Wolf of Wall Street. And that's where this is from. Everybody who's very successful uses this principle of emotional toughness triad. But we're all unique. I don't think anybody in here is going to be the boxing champion of the world. I'm not sure about winning an Academy Award or playing bongo drums naked. You know that story about Matthew McConaughey playing bongo drums naked? Well, that's a different story. Okay. But we're all unique. And so we have to discover our own uniqueness and use this power to our own benefit. And to explain this in better detail, first I have to explain about emotions in a little bit more detail. The magic of emotions. Emotions are mystical. They're magical. They're irrational. I mean, why do I cry at a sad kids movie? I mean, my wife, when she sees that, she goes, "Are you really doing that?" Yes, it's a sad movie. Or why do I get really mad when I burn this scrambled eggs? It's because of the skillet. At least that's what I tell my wife. Or why, when you're late for work and that person cuts you off in traffic, you give them the finger. Okay, maybe not that finger, but you know what I'm talking about. Emotions fill us with rage. They fill us with frustration. They fill us with negativity. But they can also fill us with joy and caring and compassion. And we want to discover how we can fill our lives full of these positive emotions. And to do that, I have to ask you this question. What do you think is the primary emotion?
Fear.
Love, fear. Right? We all have an answer. Let me answer this question. It's going to take me about 7 minutes, so I have to sidestep. But it's based on recent research that I've done. I think it's very impactful, and I believe you'll find it very impactful. About 10 years ago, David Metter came to my class. David is the National Blind Golf Champion. And he lives in Nashville, and he's one of the happiest guys I know, so I have him speak to my happiness class. Yes, I get to teach a class on happiness, so I'm very lucky and happy. And he tells my class exactly what everyone in here is thinking. How does a blind man play golf? Well, he has a coach, and the coach lines him up and takes the face and lines the face up, and David takes it back and hits it down the middle. I mean, he is really good. I've played with him. I've bet him. I've lost money. He's really good. But he also tells my class of the horrific accident, how he's coming over the hill way too fast in his car hits the tree, his head bashes into the windshield, puts him in a coma. And when he awakens in the hospital bed, the doctor's standing over him and says, "David, you severed your ocular nerve. You will be blind for the rest of your life." From the age 18, he'll be blind.